I never planned to return, not for the wedding, not for the fake smiles, and definitely not for the basement. But the message came anyway, 6 words that stopped my breath. Don't let her marry him, remember. I hadn't set foot in that house for 12 years, but something about those words clawed at me like a memory just out of reach. Everything looked the same, and yet, not quite. Her dress hung where mine used to. My photo was gone. Her face now smiled in frames that once held me. They stole more than time. They stole who I was. The house hadn't changed. Not really. The porch still creaked under my boots. The brass door knocker still shaped like a lion's head. But something felt off, cleaner, too clean, like someone had scrubbed away everything lived in, everything real. They greeted me like I was royalty. My father with his arms wide open, my stepmother beaming like the spotlight had finally come for her. And Sophia, my sister, the bride-to-be, rushed down the stairs in satin and perfume, her smile too big, too rehearsed. You came, she said, like it was a question she already knew the answer to. 12 years. That's how long I'd stayed away. No calls, no visits, just silence. And yet here I was, hugging people who had once made that silence feel like survival. They said all the right things. So glad you're here. We missed you. It's been too long. But no one asked why I left. That night I wandered the house like a stranger inside my own memory. Everything was pristine, but hollow. The family photos lining the staircase caught my attention. Dozens of them framed perfectly, all smiles and staged joy. My eyes scanned each frame. Sophia as a child, Sophia graduating, Sophia at Christmas. And then one photo tucked into the bottom corner of the hallway. A birthday party, maybe. Balloons, cake, the usual chaos of kids in paper hats. There I was, or someone who looked like me, except my face was blurred, not by age, not by damage. It looked intentional, like someone had smeared my existence just enough to forget. Dinner was pleasant, too pleasant. We sat around the long oak table like a Norman Rockwell painting, passing dishes, telling surface-level stories. My father laughed too hard. My stepmother complimented every word I said. And Sophia? She just watched me, like I was some puzzle piece she couldn't quite make fit anymore. Later, as I settled into the guest room, my old room supposedly, I noticed the subtle differences. The wallpaper had been changed. My bookshelf was gone. In its place stood a vanity covered in Sophia's makeup. Even the bed felt foreign. I opened the drawer of the nightstand, searching for anything left from before. Instead, I found a pristine photo album. Flipping through it, I saw page after page of family moments. Beach trips, holidays, birthdays, but page after page, I wasn't there, not until the last one. A single image of me as a teenager standing off to the side at what looked like Sophia's 8th grade graduation. My posture was stiff, my eyes distant, and once again my face blurred deliberately. I stared at the image, my breath catching in my throat. What kind of family scrubs you out of their history but keeps just enough of you to prove you were once real? That night, just as I was slipping into restless sleep, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. It's your wedding too, just not the one you remember. I sat up, pulse racing. My wedding? I never had one. I never even got close. The screen dimmed as I reread the message. Over and over. I didn't sleep. The next morning, over breakfast, I tried to bring up my mother. Do we still have anything of Mum's? I asked casually, watching their faces. My father sipped his coffee. Nicole, we've talked about this. She left. Sophia looked up from her phone, brow furrowed. You still believe she was ever real? The room went silent. My stepmother placed a hand over mine, smile soft. It's best not to stir up old ghosts, darling. I didn't respond. My appetite had vanished. Later that day, I snuck into the attic. Boxes were labelled meticulously, Christmas, Tax 2012, Sophia's keepsakes. One dusty bin caught my eye. Old drawings. Inside, stacks of crayon-coloured papers. Mostly Sophia's early art. But one stood out, a family portrait in childish scribbles. A man, a woman, and 2 girls. The second girl had been torn away, leaving only jagged edges. I turned it over, scribbled in faded ink, me and Mommy and Daddy and Nicole. I wasn't imagining things. Back downstairs, I stood in the living room, staring at a large framed photo I'd never seen before. It showed a family picnic, my father, stepmother, and Sophia laughing on a blanket. And, off to the side, a teenage girl holding a lemonade. She looked like me, but older, paler. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too straight. I'd never worn that dress. I'd never been at that picnic. I walked closer. Something metallic caught the light. A tiny inscription carved into the wood backing of the frame. I leaned in. She wore your face better. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Who was she? Who was I? The morning after the photograph, I tried to act normal. Polite smiles, casual questions, the usual dance. But the air was shifting. I could feel it tightening around me. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was structure, designed, intentional. Sophia found me in the garden where I pretended to admire the lilies. She slipped her arm through mine, too close, too sudden. I'm really glad you're here, Nicole, she whispered. Her voice trembled, nervous, not emotional. I mean it. I've missed you, and I'm sorry for, everything. What everything? I asked, but she didn't answer, just pressed her cheek against my shoulder like we were children again. That afternoon my stepmother handed me a jewellery box. This was your mother's, she said. You should wear it for the ceremony. It would mean a lot to your sister. Inside was a silver chain and a pale stone, set in a way that looked too modern, too flawless. I remembered my mother's necklace. An opal, cloudy and imperfect. This wasn't it. I smiled anyway. Thank you, I said. She touched my cheek like I was a prize, finally returned. That night I couldn't sleep. Something pulled me toward the basement. I hadn't gone down there since I arrived. The door creaked open and the smell hit me first. Dust, mildew, and something faintly sweet, like rotting flowers. The shelves were filled with labelled bins, but one corner caught my eye. An old chest, the kind you'd expect to find pirate gold in, sat beneath a broken lamp. I opened it slowly. Inside, nothing but a small music box, chipped and painted with ballerinas. I wound it, expecting silence. Instead, a child's voice crackled through the static hum. Nicole doesn't live here anymore. I dropped it. The sound stopped instantly. Behind the chest, something white peeked from under a loose board. I pulled it free, an ultrasound photo, old and slightly yellow, scribbled across the bottom. Nicole, terminated. The date was the year I was born. I stumbled upstairs, vile, rising. I clutched the ultrasound like a lifeline, needing air, needing truth. The next morning, I told Sophia I wanted to visit an old friend, Beth, my closest confidant in high school. We hadn't spoken in years, but I remembered her address. She opened the door, blinked, and froze. "Nicole," she said, more shocked than happy. "It's me," I said. "God, it's been—" She shook her head slowly. No, you... She glanced back into the house as if someone might correct what she was seeing. "I went to your funeral 10 years ago. I saw your casket." My mouth went dry. "What?" Beth stepped outside, closed the door behind her. "It was closed casket," she said, whispering now. "No one ever saw your face. They said it was an accident, a fire maybe. I didn't question it. I cried for weeks." "But I'm alive," I said, voice cracking. She reached out and touched my arm like she needed to feel the proof. "Who the hell are you?" I ran. Back at the house, I slammed the guest room door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking as I pulled open every drawer, every cabinet. There had to be something, some piece of paper, some scrap of truth. Behind a false panel in the closet, I found it. A book bound in leather, pages yellowed with time. My mother's handwriting danced across each one, frantic and slanted. They told me to forget. But I won't. She's not Sophia. She's Nicole. They made me say otherwise. Page after page of fear, confusion, resistance. They want her to believe she's someone else. They say it's better this way. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Don't trust anyone, not even yourself. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. In a final act of desperation, I tore through my father's office. Files, records, birth certificates, anything. In a drawer marked medical, I found it. A slim folder labelled Patient Nicole Hartman. Inside was a psychiatric intake form, notes scrawled in blue ink. Identity confusion, selective memory, unstable. Then, near the bottom of the page, a single red line crossing through my name. Nicole Hartman struck through. Below it, Sophia L. My vision blurred. If Nicole was dead, then who the hell was I? The next morning, I drove 2 towns over to the county hospital. The records office was tucked in the back, sterile and flickering under fluorescent lights. I gave the clerk my mother's full name and birth date. She typed without looking at me. "She passed," I said. "We know," she replied. A few minutes later, I sat in a chair with a thick file resting in my lap. My fingers hesitated before opening it, already bracing for the impact. But nothing could have prepared me for what I read. Multiple reports, one after another. My mother had been admitted 3 times during my childhood, all under the same diagnosis: paranoid delusions. The reports described her as agitated, obsessive, and convinced her child had been replaced. In red ink across the second page, patient fixated on belief that daughter Nicole has been substituted by another child named Sophia. There were notes from my father too, calm, logical, damning. "She began showing signs after Nicole's 7th birthday," he wrote, "became erratic, accused me of gaslighting her and hiding another girl in the basement. No such child exists." But my mother had insisted. She filed a formal report with Child Services in 1999. It had been dismissed, labelled a fabrication, the action of an unstable woman. I closed the folder, every muscle in my body clenched. On the way out, I stopped in the hospital's archive room, hoping to find something, anything, that proved my mother wasn't insane. A nurse, sympathetic to my face and tired behind her eyes, offered to help. She returned 15 minutes later with an old cassette tape, unmarked except for the date, March 2000. Back at the house, I played it on an old recorder I found buried in a kitchen drawer. The tape crackled to life. Then a child's voice, high-pitched, desperate. "Help me! I'm not Sophia! I'm not Sophia!" The audio warped. Static took over. Then silence. I stared at the recorder, trembling. That voice, it sounded like mine. Later that evening, Sophia knocked gently on my door. She stepped inside without waiting for a response. "I remember the day they brought you home," she said, leaning against the dresser. "You were quiet, hollow, almost, like someone had pressed restart." I said nothing. She sat on the edge of the bed. "They told me I had to share toys, share a room, share my name." "What do you mean?" She smiled bitterly. "You don't remember, do you? That's the gift they gave you. They wiped everything, started you fresh, made you perfect." "That's not true. It doesn't matter anymore," she said, standing. "You were chosen. I was just the shadow. But sometimes shadows learn how to live in the dark better than the ones in the light." Before I could respond, my phone rang. "Nicole Hartman?" the voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Officer Taylor from the County Sheriff's Office. We've received a report of a possible trespass. The homeowner claims you're residing in the property illegally." "What?" I gasped. "That's my family's house." "I'm going to have to ask you to come down to the station for questioning." My hands went cold. An hour later I sat in a stark white room under harsh light, opposite two officers and my father. He looked calm, concerned, too calm. "My daughter's been unwell for years," he said. "We've done everything we could, but her episodes have returned. She believes she's someone else again." "That's not true," I shouted. "I'm Nicole. I've always been—" "She's not," he said softly now to the officers. "She's Sophia. She was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder when she was 12. I turned to the officers. "He's lying. He replaced me. He changed everything. She's had these breaks before," my father continued. "Believes she's living someone else's life. Creates entire narratives. My wife and I, we just want her to be safe. They didn't arrest me, but they did admit me. For observation, they said. The walls of the psychiatric ward were too quiet. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was surgical, sterile, intentional. My room had no locks. My phone was taken. Every reflection seemed dulled, like even the mirrors had been taught to doubt what they saw. A psychiatrist named Dr. Vale came to see me. She was young, gentle-voiced, but her questions were knives wrapped in silk. "Do you remember ever being Sophia?" she asked on the third day. "No," I replied for the third time. "You signed this intake form 10 years ago," she said, showing me a photocopy. "Here's your signature." I stared at it. The handwriting looked like mine, but also not quite, like someone had copied it. She leaned in. "Sometimes our minds do extraordinary things to protect us, including creating whole identities. You think I'm Sophia, pretending to be Nicole? I think there's trauma, deep trauma, and you're trying to survive it in the only way your mind knows how." I didn't answer. "That night I was given a box of crayons and paper for self-expression," they said. "I didn't draw, but when I flipped one sheet over, I froze. There, scrawled in childish letters, barely legible under the fluorescent light, was a name. Sophia L. Underneath it, age 10, and beside it, my handwriting. The silence of the ward was no longer hollow. It buzzed, not with fear, but with focus. Something had cracked inside me, a fracture that let in light. I remembered, not everything, not clearly, but enough. I saw the stairs, polished wood, the banister wrapped in tinsel. Christmas. I was 6. My mother was screaming, not in rage but in warning. My father's shadow moved behind her, then the fall. Her body tumbling, her head striking the last step. The blood wasn't red in my memory, it was black, like ink spilling through water. And then Sophia, standing at the top, watching. No one spoke of it again, but something changed that night. Back in the ward, I demanded my necklace. The staff hesitated, but eventually relented. I plucked a strand of hair from the chain's clasp, careful, deliberate. They watched me like I was unravelling. I was. I mailed the sample using my one supervised call to an independent DNA lab. Rushed results, extra cost, worth it. 3 days later, the report came in an envelope I almost couldn't open. My hands shook. But inside, the truth waited. The hair didn't match the Hartman family. It matched a cold case file from 1995. Sophia Lynn Walters, reported missing, age 5. I dropped the paper. My knees buckled. That afternoon, I requested access to my mother's full medical record. The staff resisted, I insisted. Finally, they connected me with her former psychiatrist, Dr. Mira Jacobs. Retired now, but still sharp. We met in her sunroom, surrounded by succulents and quiet. She wasn't insane, Dr. Jacobs said before I even asked. She was lucid, controlled, heartbroken. Then why? She made a mistake, Dr. Jacobs said, sipping tea. She trusted your father, believed in his redemption. But after the incident, she began to fear him. And when she tried to protect you, they turned it against her. You mean they erased me? Dr. Jacobs nodded. Shock therapy, trauma reconditioning. You were young, pliable. They crafted a narrative, and your mind accepted it. But why would they do that? She met my gaze, steady. Because the real Nicole didn't survive the fall. My breath stopped. The journal. I returned to the ward and tore through the drawer until I found it. The one I had hidden behind a false panel. My mother's journal. I flipped to the final page, the one I'd skipped before. If you are reading this, then it's already too late to save your sister. I only hope you can save yourself. The ink bled from water damage, or maybe tears. I didn't cry, I burned. Within a day, I was discharged under improved condition. No one asked how I'd healed so fast. They just wanted me gone. I didn't go home. I went to the courthouse. The lawyer I met was sceptical at first, but once I presented the DNA report, the journal and the hospital records, he grew quiet, then pale. You want to open a 30-year-old missing persons case? He asked. I want to close it the right way, he agreed. Together we petitioned the police to revisit the case of Sophia Walters. It wasn't easy, but time had worn down resistance. A few of the original detectives were still alive. One even remembered the odd call from a woman who said her daughter had been stolen and renamed. Meanwhile, I retrieved an old VHS camcorder from the attic, one I'd seen my father use endlessly when I was young. I didn't expect it to work, but the tapes were intact. And the footage? One session, dated months after the fall. I sat in a chair, eyes glazed, a man behind the camera speaking gently. Nicole, he said, what's your name? I looked into the lens. Nicole? Who's Sophia? I frowned. She's gone. Daddy said she fell. Another tape. different room. I was colouring. Nicole, do you love your new family? I paused, then nodded. Yes. The last tape chilled me to the bone. The camera was handheld, shaky. My father's voice, urgent, sharp. Look at me. No one has to know. Macy-La Nicole. From now on. Got it? The girl nodded. The girl was me. The wedding was flawless, at least on the surface. White roses lined the aisle, soft violins hummed from hidden speakers, and every guest looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. It was the kind of beauty that made your teeth ache. I stood at the edge of it all, watching from the shadows. Sophia, my sister, or maybe not, glowed beneath a veil that looked heavier than silk. She glanced around like a hunted thing trapped in lace. My father walked beside her, beaming, proud. My stepmother trailed behind, clutching her clutch like it might hold back time. I waited until they reached the altar, then I stepped forward. Voices hushed, heads turned. The music slowed, then stopped altogether. I'm sorry, I said into the mic someone had forgotten to turn off. But before this wedding continues, there's something you all need to see. Gasps, confused glances. My father took a step forward, his mouth tight, but he knew what was coming. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and handed it to the DJ. Play it, I said. The screen behind the altar flickered to life. A grainy video appeared, home footage, time-stamped from years ago. It showed a little girl sitting stiffly in a chair, her voice robotic. What's your name? Nicole. Who's Sophia? She's gone. Daddy said she fell. Another clip followed. Therapy sessions, hospital records, DNA reports. A voiceover narrated each file. My voice. And then the final scene, my father's voice. Caught on tape. No one has to know. Macy-La Nicole. From now on. Got it? The crowd erupted. Some gasped, others shouted. One woman screamed. My stepmother fainted, dropping like a marionette with her strings cut. A few guests rushed to help. My father turned to the screen, then to me, rage boiling beneath his skin. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. I do, I replied, and so do they. Behind me, 2 detectives stepped forward, ones I'd met just days before. I didn't need to say anything. They read him his rights, cuffed him on the spot. He didn't resist. My sister, Sophia, stood frozen, veil trembling. She looked at me, eyes wide, then lowered her gaze. I knew, she said softly, her voice breaking. Not all of it, but enough. I just wanted things to stay how they were. I didn't want to lose everything again. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt none of my own. Not yet. You already lost it, I said. You just chose to pretend you hadn't. Guests began leaving. Some whispered apologies. Others couldn't meet my gaze. The truth was too raw, too close to their own secrets. I stood alone in the chaos, breathing it all in. Then something shimmered near my feet. I looked down and saw it, tucked into the bouquet that had fallen from Sophia's hands, a ring, gold, worn, familiar. I bent down and picked it up, turning it in my fingers. Inside the band, a name was engraved, E. Walters, my mother. The weeks that followed blurred. Courtrooms, interviews, paperwork. My father was charged with obstruction, falsifying medical records, unlawful psychiatric commitment, and accessory to identity fraud. He pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. The house was seized. My stepmother disappeared into quiet shame. Sophia, my sister, my shadow, vanished from public life. And me, I became real. I filed the paperwork to legally change my name. No longer Nicole Hartman. No longer a ghost in someone else's life. I reclaimed what was mine, Sophia Lynn Walters. The name felt strange at first, like trying on a coat left in the attic for decades, but slowly it fit. One afternoon, weeks later, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it and found her, Sophia. Not in silk or designer heels, but jeans and an oversized hoodie. Her face was bare, no veil, no mask. "I came to say goodbye," she said. "You already did," I replied. "I didn't know what they did to you," she whispered. "Not all of it. I didn't know how to live in your skin, but I was too scared to step out of it." "I get it," I said, "but fear doesn't excuse silence." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'll disappear. For real this time." I closed the door behind her. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like exhaling. The next morning, my lawyer called. "There's something you should see," he said. "A package arrived from an old colleague of your mother's." It was a letter, written in neat, careful script. "My darling Sophia," it began, "if you are reading this, then everything I feared has come to pass. But also everything I hoped. You made it, you survived. And now you know you are Sophia and you deserve to live as yourself. Fully, freely, fiercely." Tears slipped down my cheeks. The first real ones. Not for pain, for freedom. The organisation started small. A blog, a forum, a few late-night phone calls with survivors too scared to use their real names. But soon, Face Name became more than just a name. It became a movement. I told my story first, in full. On a podcast that reached more listeners than I expected. I didn't dramatise it. I didn't soften it either. I spoke about the erased memories, the false childhood, the stolen identity, about becoming someone else because the adults around me needed a cleaner version of the truth. I told the world how they replaced Nicole, how they rewrote me into her, and how for years I lived a life that was not mine. The messages poured in. Some were angry, others disbelieving. But most were quiet confessions. This happened to me too. My parents told me my memories were wrong. I've never seen my baby photos. I wasn't alone. Within months, Face Name had chapters in 5 cities. We connected survivors of gaslighting, coercion, memory suppression, and identity manipulation. We trained legal advocates. We lobbied for new protections in therapy ethics. We created digital archives for erased histories, and we told our stories again and again on stages, on screens, in courtrooms. I was invited to talk shows, conferences, mental health roundtables. I hated the cameras at first. They reminded me too much of that basement, of the lens pointed at a 6-year-old girl being told who to be. But this time, I wasn't being recorded to forget. I was speaking to remember. One afternoon, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a camcorder, the kind from the 90s, and a single tape. Labelled in my mother's handwriting, "For Sophia." I held my breath as I pressed play. The image flickered, then focused. My mother sat in a chair, holding something in her lap, maybe a blanket, maybe a memory. Her eyes were tired but steady, her voice calm but raw. "Sophia," she said, "my sweet girl. If you're watching this, then I've failed to protect you, but I believe in you. I always have." She looked away for a moment, then back. "They made you into someone else. They thought they were fixing a problem, but you were never the problem. You were the truth, and truth scares people who live in lies." Tears blurred the screen, not hers, mine. "You will find your name again," she said, "but only if you're willing to lose everything they gave you." The tape ended. I didn't move for hours. And then, one day, it happened. I was at a signing event for the organisation's first published collection, Reclaimed Stories of the Stolen Self, a long line of faces, some smiling, some crying. And then a little girl stepped forward, maybe 9, maybe 10. She clutched the book to her chest like it might fly away. "Are you Sophia Walters?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am." She nodded slowly, then said, "You're the first person who ever helped me know my real name." I signed her copy with shaking hands. Now I live alone. In a quiet apartment in Portland, lots of windows, lots of light. Ferns dangle from every corner. I keep the furniture soft, the colours warm, the space open. I don't keep many pictures, not of the old days, not of them. But I do keep the drawing, the one I made as a child, the one where the name Sophia L. was scratched onto the back in crayon. It's framed now by my desk, proof that somewhere deep inside I never forgot. I paint sometimes. It started as therapy, then became something more. I paint scenes I remember, not as Nicole, but as Sophia. I paint the staircase, the attic, the girl with the lemonade who looked like me but wasn't me, and I paint the face in the mirror, slowly, over and over, until the brushstrokes feel like home. I don't speak to Sophia, my former sister, not out of hate, but closure. We were both victims, but only one of us chose the silence. I chose the fire. Sometimes I think about Nicole, the real Nicole, the girl who fell, the girl they couldn't save. I don't know if her soul ever left that house, but I carry her with me now in truth, in justice, in name, and I carry my mother too. Not in grief, but in purpose. I walk through the world as I am. No more masks, no more corrections, no more blurred photographs, just me, Sophia Lynn Walters. I was once erased. Now I am indelible.